The grand hall of the Zephyrian royal palace stretched endlessly before Marcus' chin, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 3 suns through massive viewing ports. He stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, as Princess Zalara paced before him like a caged predator. Her silver scales caught the light with each angry step, and her 4 eyes blazed with fury that had been building for weeks. Marcus had been the human ambassador to the Zephyrian Empire for 2 years now. In that time, he had learned their customs, mastered their complex language, and earned the grudging respect of most of the court. But Princess Zalara had never warmed to him. She saw humans as nothing more than primitive upstarts who had stumbled into space travel through sheer luck rather than true intelligence. "You dare suggest that humans could contribute to our military strategy?" Princess Zalara's voice echoed off the crystal walls, sharp and cutting. "Your species barely managed to leave your own solar system without destroying yourselves. You fight with crude weapons and even cruder tactics." The other diplomats in the hall shifted uncomfortably. Representatives from a dozen alien species watched the exchange with growing tension. This was supposed to be a peaceful summit to discuss the growing threat of the Void Devourers, an ancient enemy that consumed entire star systems. But it had devolved into Princess Zalara's personal attack on human capabilities. Marcus remained calm, though something flickered behind his dark eyes. "Your Highness, I merely suggested that human experience with asymmetric warfare might provide useful insights. We have faced overwhelming odds before and found ways to survive." "Survive?" Princess Zalara laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "You call your pathetic struggles survival? You spent centuries killing each other over scraps of dirt and primitive resources. Your entire history is nothing but violence and ignorance dressed up as civilization." The Colonian representative, Ambassador Thex, tentatively raised one of his 6 arms. "Perhaps we should focus on the Void Devourer threat, rather than past conflicts." Princess Zalara whirled on him, her tail lashing. "The threat is exactly what I'm discussing. This human suggests we should listen to his species' military advice when they couldn't even prevent their own planet from being ravaged by wars, disease, and environmental collapse. They're parasites who spread across the galaxy because they destroyed their own world." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Our history has indeed been marked by conflict, Your Highness. We don't deny that. But those experiences taught us valuable lessons about adaptation, resourcefulness, and unity in the face of extinction." "Unity?" Princess Zalara stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Where was this unity when your people built weapons capable of destroying entire continents? Where was your wisdom when you poisoned your own air and water? You're nothing but clever animals who learned to build bigger clubs." The silence in the hall grew deafening. Even the usually chattering Pixian delegates had gone quiet, their wing beats barely audible. Marcus stood perfectly still. But those who knew humans well enough might have noticed the subtle change in his posture, the way his hands slowly unclenched behind his back. Princess Zalara wasn't finished. She circled him now like a prosecutor delivering a final argument. "The Zephyrian Empire has maintained peace for over 10,000 years. We have eliminated poverty, disease, and want from our worlds. Our technology surpasses anything your species can comprehend. Our military has never known defeat. And you, representing a species that still fights over imaginary lines on maps, dare to offer us advice?" "Your Highness," Marcus said quietly, "I understand your skepticism. The human record is far from perfect." "Perfect?" Princess Zalara's laugh was even more bitter than before. "It's not about perfection, human. It's about basic competence. Your species is a cosmic accident, a statistical aberration that should have died out millennia ago. The only reason you're here at all is because the galaxy took pity on you and shared its technology. Without us, you'd still be throwing rocks at each other in caves." Something shifted in the atmosphere. The other delegates seemed to sense it, a subtle change in the energy of the room. Marcus remained motionless, but his eyes had gone completely flat, emotionless in a way that somehow seemed more dangerous than any display of anger. Princess Zalara leaned in closer, her voice now carrying the full weight of royal authority. "So please, Ambassador Chen, explain to me why the mighty Zephyrian Empire should lower itself to seek advice from a species of primitive warmongers who can't even manage their own affairs without destroying everything they touch?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every being in the hall waited for Marcus's response, expecting either a defensive outburst or a diplomatic retreat. Instead, Marcus Chen did something unexpected. He nodded slowly, as if seriously considering her words. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost reflective. "You're absolutely right, Your Highness. Humans are violent, destructive, and often foolish. We have made terrible mistakes, caused immense suffering, and nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. We are, as you say, primitive compared to the great civilizations of the galaxy." Princess Zalara blinked, clearly not expecting this response. The other delegates exchanged confused glances. Marcus continued, his tone remaining perfectly even. "We are indeed a young species, barely out of our infancy by galactic standards. Our technology is crude, our politics chaotic, and our history stained with blood. The Zephyrian Empire has every right to look upon us with disdain." Princess Zalara seemed momentarily off balance. "Yes, exactly. Finally, some honesty from a human." "However," Marcus said, and something in that single word made several delegates lean forward, "there is one thing I would like to clarify before I recommend that the Human Federation withdraw from these negotiations entirely." The room went completely silent. Even Princess Zalara's tail stopped its restless movement. Marcus looked directly at her, his brown eyes meeting her 4 silver ones without flinching. "You mentioned that humans have never faced a threat like the Void Devourers, that we lack the experience and wisdom of older civilizations, that our primitive nature makes us unsuitable allies in this conflict." "That's correct," Princess Zalara said, though something in her voice suggested she was no longer as certain as she had been moments before. "Your Highness," Marcus said softly, "with all due respect to the great Zephyrian Empire and its 10,000 years of peace, the Void Devourers aren't coming for your technology or your wisdom. They're coming to consume everything that lives. And when that happens, they won't care about your perfect record or your advanced civilization. They'll only care about one thing: how hard their prey fights back." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "You're right that humans are primitive. We are brutal, chaotic, and destructive. But there's something you should understand about primitive, brutal, chaotic, and destructive creatures, Your Highness." Marcus's voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it now, something that made the hair on the necks of every mammalian species in the room stand up. "We're very, very good at staying alive." Princess Zalara stared at him, and for the first time since he had known her, she seemed at a loss for words. Marcus straightened, smoothing down his simple human diplomatic uniform. "But you're absolutely correct that the Zephyrian Empire doesn't need advice from primitive warmongers. I'll inform Earth that the Human Federation will be withdrawing our offer of military assistance. I'm sure your perfect record will continue to serve you well." He turned and began walking toward the massive doors of the hall, his footsteps echoing in the crystal chamber. The other delegates watched in stunned silence as the human ambassador moved with calm, measured steps toward the exit. Princess Zalara found her voice as he reached the halfway point. "Ambassador Chen, wait. I didn't say the negotiations were over." Marcus paused but didn't turn around. "Your Highness, you made your position quite clear. Humans are primitive, violent, and unsuitable as allies. I see no point in continuing discussions that would clearly be beneath the dignity of the Zephyrian Empire. That's not... I was merely pointing out the obvious differences in our civilizations, Princess Zalara said, and there was something different in her voice now, something that might have been uncertainty. Marcus slowly turned to face her, his expression completely neutral. Of course, Your Highness. And those differences make it clear that humans have nothing to offer in this conflict. We should leave the defense of the galaxy to civilizations that have earned the right to determine its fate. He resumed walking toward the door, and this time Princess Zalara didn't call out to stop him, but as he reached the threshold, he paused once more and looked back over his shoulder. For what it's worth, Your Highness, I hope your 10,000 years of peace have prepared you for what's coming. Because the Void Devourers have been feeding in the dark spaces between galaxies for millions of years. They've consumed civilizations far older and more advanced than any of us, and they're very, very hungry. With that, Marcus Chen walked out of the Crystal Hall, leaving behind a silence so complete that the only sound was the distant hum of the space station's life support systems. Princess Zalara stood frozen where he had left her, staring at the empty doorway. Around her, the other delegates began to murmur among themselves, but she barely heard them. For the first time in her life, the princess, who had never known fear, felt something cold settling in her stomach. It wasn't until Captain Vex, the head of her personal guard, approached her with obvious concern that she realized how long she had been standing there. Your Highness, Captain Vex said quietly, his own scales showing the stress patterns that indicated deep unease. Perhaps we should discuss security arrangements in light of the ambassador's departure. Princess Zalara looked at her most trusted guardian, a warrior who had served the royal family for 50 years and had never shown fear in battle. But she could see it in his eyes now, the same cold uncertainty that was growing in her own mind. Captain, she said slowly, what do you know about human military history? Captain Vex's 4 eyes met hers, and she saw her own growing dread reflected there. More than I wish I did, Your Highness. More than I wish I did. 3 days after Marcus Chen's departure, Princess Zalara found herself in the restricted archives of the Royal Library, surrounded by data crystals and holographic displays that cast eerie shadows across the ancient chamber. She had dismissed her attendance hours ago, claiming she needed solitude to contemplate strategic matters. In truth, she was researching something that should have been beneath her notice: human military history. Captain Vex stood beside her, his own research having begun the moment the human ambassador walked out of the Crystal Hall. Neither of them spoke as they absorbed file after file of information that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. "Look at this," Princess Zalara whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast chamber. She gestured to a holographic display showing Earth's surface during what humans called World War II. Cities burned, continents shifted armies like game pieces, and the casualty numbers scrolled endlessly down the screen. They fought with primitive weapons for 6 years. 6 years of continuous global warfare. Captain Vex nodded grimly, pulling up another display. "This is just one conflict, Your Highness. They called it the Second World War because they had an even larger one just 20 years earlier. And before that..." He gestured helplessly at the mountain of data. "They've been fighting continuously for their entire recorded history." Princess Zalara's 4 eyes widened as she accessed another file. "This can't be accurate. It says here that during their Cold War, they built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet dozens of times over. But they never used them? The data appears to be verified through multiple sources," Captain Vex replied, his own voice showing strain. "They brought their entire species to the brink of extinction and then pulled back. Multiple times." The princess moved to another display. this one showing more recent conflicts. Look at these numbers, Captain. In something they called the Battle of Stalingrad, they fought for months in a single city. Millions died in winter. They ate their leather boots and fought in temperatures that would kill most species instantly. Captain Vex had found something else, something that made his scales shift to the deep purple of profound unease. Your Highness, you need to see this. It's their strategic doctrine for something called mutually assured destruction. Princess Zalara read the file in silence, her expression growing more troubled with each line. They based their entire planetary defense on the promise that if anyone attacked them, they would ensure everyone died, including themselves. It maintained peace for decades, Captain Vex said quietly. They were so convincingly willing to destroy everything that no one dared test them. That's insane, Princess Zalara breathed. No rational species would actually follow through on such a threat. Captain Vex pulled up another file. According to this, they came within minutes of executing it several times. Equipment failures, miscommunications, individual commanders who had to choose between obeying orders and ending civilization. Each time, someone chose to risk court-martial or execution rather than launch the weapons. Princess Zalara felt something she had never experienced before, a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. They're actually insane, completely, genuinely insane. There's more, Captain Vex said reluctantly. He activated another display, this one showing human expansion into space. Look at how they explored their own solar system. They strapped themselves to barely controlled explosions and threw themselves into the void with technology that failed constantly. Their early space missions had failure rates that would be considered criminal negligence by any reasonable civilization. The princess studied the data, watching primitive human spacecraft struggling through space with systems that seemed designed to fail at the worst possible moments. Why would they take such risks? What could possibly be worth this level of self-destruction? I don't think they saw it as self-destruction, Your Highness. I think they saw it as adaptation. Captain Vex pulled up a file that made both of them fall silent. This is their response to natural disasters. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods. Look at their casualty rates. Princess Zalara watched in fascination as the data showed humans repeatedly walking into situations that should have been certain death, rescuing survivors, rebuilding in the same dangerous locations, and preparing for the next disaster. They go back, every time. They go back to the places that tried to kill them and build bigger settlements. Your Highness, Captain Vex said slowly, I think we may have made a serious error in judgment. Before Princess Zalara could respond, an urgent chime echoed through the archive chamber. The royal communication system activated, projecting the image of Admiral Keth, the supreme commander of the Zephyrian fleet. Your Highness, Admiral Keth said, his normally composed demeanor showing cracks of stress. We have received disturbing intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations. Princess Zalara straightened, trying to push aside the unsettling research she had been conducting. What is it, Admiral? The Void Devourers, Your Highness. They're moving faster than our projections indicated. Our outermost colonies have gone silent. We estimate they will reach the core Zephyrian systems within 18 months, not the 3 years we originally calculated. The blood drained from Princess Zalara's face. 18 months? Are you certain? The advanced scout fleets have confirmed it. Whatever intelligence they're operating with, it's more sophisticated than we assumed. They're not just consuming randomly, they're targeting strategic positions, cutting off our supply lines and communication networks. Captain Vex stepped forward. Admiral, what is the current status of our defensive preparations? Admiral Keth hesitated, which was itself alarming from a military leader known for his unshakable confidence. We are reassessing our strategy in light of this new timeline. Our original plans assumed we would have more time to coordinate with allied species and establish defensive positions. Princess Zalara felt the weight of her earlier conversation with Marcus Chen settling on her like a crushing burden. What about our allies? Are the other empires ready to mobilize? That's complicated, Your Highness. The Colonian Republic is still debating in their council chambers. The Pixian swarm is concerned about exposing their breeding worlds. The Mechanical Collective is running probability calculations that could take months to complete. Admiral Keth's image flickered with interference. Most of our allies are proceeding as if we still have years to prepare. The silence that followed was deafening. Princess Zalara looked at Captain Vex, seeing her own growing panic reflected in his eyes. Admiral, she said carefully, in your professional opinion, are our current defensive capabilities sufficient to repel the Void Devourer advance? Another hesitation. Your Highness, the Zephyrian fleet is the most advanced in the galaxy. Our technology is unparalleled. Our crews are highly trained and our strategic positions are well established. However, the Void Devourers have consumed dozens of advanced civilizations over the millennia. Some of them had technology that matched or exceeded our own. They are not a conventional enemy that can be defeated through superior firepower or tactical brilliance alone. Princess Zalara closed her eyes, Marcus Chen's words echoing in her mind. They're very, very good at staying alive. Admiral, she said quietly, what do you know about human military capabilities? The question clearly caught Admiral Keth off guard. Human capabilities, Your Highness? They are adequate for a primitive species, their technology is crude, their tactics are often chaotic, and their equipment is far below galactic standards. Why do you ask? Captain Vex and Princess Zalara exchanged glances. Around them, the research displays continued to glow, showing images of human warfare, survival, and adaptation that painted a very different picture than Admiral Keth's assessment. Have you ever studied human strategic doctrine, Admiral? Princess Zalara asked. I've reviewed their basic military structure, of course. Standard procedure for evaluating potential allies or threats. They appear to favor brute force approaches over sophisticated strategy. Princess Zalara looked at one of the displays showing human tactics during their various wars. What she had initially dismissed as primitive chaos was beginning to look like something else entirely: adaptation under impossible circumstances. Admiral, I want you to conduct a comprehensive analysis of human military history and capabilities. Not just their technology, but their strategic thinking, their response to overwhelming odds, their methods of adaptation and survival. Your Highness, with respect, I'm not sure that's the best use of our preparation time. The Void Devourers have been fighting and consuming advanced civilizations for millions of years. Princess Zalara interrupted, her voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. They know how advanced civilizations think, how they plan, how they fight. Maybe what we need isn't more advanced thinking. Admiral Keth looked confused. I'm not sure I understand, Your Highness. Princess Zalara stared at the display showing human soldiers fighting in impossible conditions, never surrendering, always adapting, always finding new ways to survive. Maybe what we need is primitive thinking, Admiral. Maybe what we need are allies who are too stupid to know when they're beaten. The communication ended, leaving Princess Zalara and Captain Vex alone in the archive chamber. The research displays continued to glow around them, filled with the violent, chaotic, impossible history of a species that should have destroyed itself long ago, but instead had somehow clawed its way to the stars. Your Highness, Captain Vex said quietly. What are you thinking? Princess Zalara was silent for a long moment, studying a particular display that showed human casualties from a battle called Thermopylae. A few hundred warriors had stood against an army of hundreds of thousands, knowing they would die, buying time for their people to prepare for war. They had all died, but their sacrifice had become legend, inspiring their civilization for thousands of years. "I'm thinking, Captain, that I may have made the worst mistake in Zephyrian history," she said finally. "I dismissed a potential ally because they were primitive and violent. But what if primitive and violent is exactly what we need?" She turned to face him, and Captain Vex saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Genuine fear, mixed with the faintest glimmer of hope. "Captain, I want you to find Ambassador Chen immediately." "Your Highness, he departed for human space 3 days ago. He's likely halfway back to Earth by now." Princess Zalara nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to go to him. Prepare my fastest ship, Captain. We're going to Earth." Captain Vex stared at her. "Your Highness, the royal family has never left Zephyrian space. The security risks alone." "The security risks of staying here may be far greater," Princess Zalara said, looking once more at the displays showing humanity's impossible history of survival against overwhelming odds. "Besides, I don't think we're going as conquerors or diplomats, Captain." "Then what are we going as, Your Highness?" Princess Zalara smiled grimly. "We're going as students, Captain. We're going to learn how to be primitive." The human home system looked nothing like what Princess Zalara had expected. As her sleek Zephyrian diplomatic vessel approached Earth, she found herself staring at a world that seemed almost aggressively ordinary. No massive orbital rings, no crystalline cities floating in space, no demonstration of technological superiority. Just a blue and green planet surrounded by what appeared to be a chaotic network of space stations, defensive platforms, and mining facilities. "Your Highness," Captain Vex said from beside her at the viewing port, "the humans are requesting identification and purpose of visit. They seem cautious." Princess Zalara wasn't surprised. After her public humiliation of their ambassador, she doubted they would welcome her with open arms. "Tell them that Princess Zalara of the Zephyrian Empire requests an audience with Ambassador Chen. Tell them—" She paused, the words difficult to form. "Tell them I come seeking his guidance." Captain Vex's 4 eyes widened slightly, but he relayed the message without comment. The response came quickly, and it wasn't what either of them expected. "They're directing us to Luna Base, Your Highness. Ambassador Chen is apparently there conducting some kind of briefing." Princess Zalara nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety she had never experienced before. The flight to Luna was short, but it gave her time to observe the human system more carefully. What she saw gradually began to change her understanding of human civilization. The space around Earth wasn't chaotic. It was layered. Multiple rings of defensive platforms, each designed for different types of threats, asteroid mining operations that could clearly be converted to weapon production at a moment's notice, civilian ships that carried what her sensors identified as military-grade sensor packages. Even their merchant vessels seemed to be built with reinforced hulls and weapons hardpoints. "Captain," she said quietly, "does this look like a peaceful civilization to you?" Captain Vex studied the displays with a professional soldier's eye. "No, Your Highness. This looks like a civilization that expects to be attacked at any moment. Everything is dual use. Everything is prepared for war. But they've been at peace for decades, according to our intelligence reports." "Have they?" Captain Vex asked. "Or have they just been preparing for the next war?" Luna Base turned out to be a massive facility built into the moon's surface, with only the docking bays and communication arrays visible from space. As their ship was guided into a landing bay, Princess Zalara noticed the subtle but unmistakable signs of military preparation everywhere. The docking bay could clearly serve as a weapons emplacement if needed. The civilian technicians moved with military precision. Even the welcoming party that met them carried themselves like soldiers. Ambassador Chen was waiting for them, but he wasn't alone. With him stood a woman in military uniform, whose bearing immediately identified her as a high-ranking officer, and an elderly man whose simple clothes couldn't hide the sharp intelligence in his eyes. "Your Highness," Marcus said, his tone perfectly diplomatic, despite everything that had passed between them. "Welcome to Luna Base. I confess I was surprised to learn of your arrival." Princess Zalara stepped forward, acutely aware that this was perhaps the most important conversation of her life. "Ambassador Chen, I have come to apologize." The silence that followed was deafening. Princess Zalara could see the surprise in Marcus's eyes, though his expression remained carefully neutral. "Your Highness, that's not necessary." "Yes, it is," Princess Zalara interrupted. "What I said in the Crystal Hall was inexcusable. I allowed my prejudices to blind me to truths I should have seen. I have spent the last few days learning about human history, and I realized that I gravely misjudged your people." Marcus exchanged glances with his companions. The woman in military uniform stepped forward slightly. "Your Highness, I'm General Sarah Martinez, Commanding Officer of Terran Defense Forces. If I may ask, what specifically changed your mind about humanity?" Princess Zalara looked at the three humans facing her, seeing them with eyes that had been opened by days of impossible research. "I learned that humans don't just fight wars, General. You fight extinction. Over and over again. You face impossible odds and somehow find ways to survive. You adapt, you improvise, you refuse to surrender even when any rational species would accept defeat." "That's one way to put it," the elderly man said with what might have been amusement. "Though some might just call it stubborn stupidity." Marcus gestured to him. "Your Highness, this is Dr. James Morrison, our strategic planning coordinator." Dr. Morrison smiled grimly. "I prefer creative problem-solving under pressure, but stubborn stupidity works too." Princess Zalara found herself studying Dr. Morrison more carefully. Despite his casual appearance, something about him reminded her of the military analysts she knew. "Dr. Morrison, may I ask what kind of strategic planning you coordinate?" "Right now? Figuring out how to kill things that are supposedly unkillable," he said simply. "The Void Devourers, specifically." Captain Vex stepped forward. "You're planning to fight the Void Devourers, but they've consumed civilizations far more advanced than humanity." "Yes," Dr. Morrison said cheerfully. "That's exactly why we might have a chance." Princess Zalara felt that now familiar chill. "I don't understand." General Martinez gestured toward a corridor leading deeper into the base. "Perhaps we should show you what we've been working on. I think it might help explain what Dr. Morrison means." They walked through corridors that seemed to extend endlessly into Luna's interior. As they moved deeper, Princess Zalara began to notice things that made her scales shift with unease. Blast doors that could seal off entire sections. Emergency supplies positioned at regular intervals. Weapon emplacements disguised as maintenance alcoves. "How deep does this base extend?" Captain Vex asked. "All the way to Luna's core," General Martinez replied. "We've been preparing this facility for 40 years. "Preparing for what?" "The end of everything," Dr. Morrison said matter-of-factly. "When we first learned about the Void Devourers, most human analysts concluded that any conventional defense was impossible, so we stopped planning conventional defenses." They reached a massive chamber that took Princess Zalara's breath away. The space was enormous, carved out of solid rock, filled with equipment she couldn't even begin to identify. Hundreds of humans worked at stations throughout the chamber, and the level of activity suggested this was just one part of a much larger operation. "What is this place?" Princess Zalara whispered. "This is Project Prometheus," Marcus said quietly. named after the human myth of stealing fire from the gods. Dr. Morrison walked to a central control station and activated a massive holographic display. What appeared above them made Princess Zalara's 4 eyes go wide with shock and horror. It was Earth, but not as she had seen it from space. The hologram showed the planet's interior, and it was filled with a network of installations that boggled the mind. Tunnels, chambers, facilities, and weapons that extended from the surface all the way to the planet's core. "You've weaponized your entire planet," Captain Vex breathed. "We've done more than that," General Martinez said grimly. "Show them the contingency plans, Doctor." The display shifted, showing other human colonies, other worlds, other systems. Each one showed the same pattern: surface installations connected to vast underground networks that seemed designed for one purpose. "You've weaponized everything," Princess Zalara said, her voice barely audible. "Every human world, every colony, every installation. The Void Devourers consume civilizations by targeting their centers of power, their technological hubs, their populations," Dr. Morrison explained. "They've been doing it for millions of years. They know exactly how to efficiently destroy advanced societies." Marcus stepped forward. "But they've never faced a civilization that planned to lose." Princess Zalara stared at him. "Planned to lose? Every human world is designed to be destroyed, Your Highness. Multiple times if necessary. We've built our entire civilization to be disposable." Dr. Morrison manipulated the display again, showing what looked like evacuation routes and fallback positions. "When the Void Devourers arrive, they'll find exactly what they expect to find: cities, technology, population centers. They'll destroy them efficiently, just like they've destroyed thousands of other civilizations." "And then?" Captain Vex asked, though something in his voice suggested he was beginning to understand. "And then the real war begins," General Martinez said. "From the tunnels, from the hidden bases, from facilities they don't even know exist. We've been studying every Void Devourer attack for decades, learning their patterns, their methods, their weaknesses." Princess Zalara was beginning to see the scope of what they had planned, and it terrified her more than the Void Devourers themselves. "You're going to let them consume your surface civilizations and then attack them from underground." "More than that," Marcus said quietly. "We're going to make them think they've won. We're going to let them establish their feeding operations, let them build their extraction facilities, let them settle in for a long harvest." "And then?" Dr. Morrison smiled, and Princess Zalara finally understood why Captain Vex had been afraid to research human history. "Then we're going to teach them why you should never corner a human." The display changed again, showing weapons and tactics that made Princess Zalara's sophisticated military mind real. Asteroid impact weapons disguised as mining operations, biological warfare systems hidden in agricultural installations, antimatter charges concealed in the cores of human worlds, ready to turn entire planets into weapons. "This is insane," Captain Vex whispered. "You're planning to fight a million-year-old enemy with tactics that could destroy your entire civilization." "Yes," Dr. Morrison said cheerfully. "Isn't it wonderful?" Princess Zalara found herself laughing, though it came out more like a sob. "You're all completely insane, genuinely, clinically insane." "That's what we're counting on," General Martinez said. "The Void Devourers have consumed thousands of rational, advanced civilizations. They know how rational civilizations think, how they fight, how they surrender." Marcus looked directly at Princess Zalara. "They've never faced a civilization stupid enough to turn their own planets into bombs." Princess Zalara stood in silence for a long moment, processing what she had seen. Finally, she turned to Marcus with an expression he had never seen before, humility mixed with desperate hope. "Ambassador Chen, I came here to apologize and to ask for your people's help in defending the galaxy against the Void Devourers. Now I realize I was thinking about this all wrong." How so, Your Highness? Princess Zalara looked around the chamber at the impossible preparations humanity had made for a war that might never come, at the weapons and plans that defied every principle of rational military strategy. I don't want humanity to help defend the galaxy, she said quietly. I want humanity to teach the galaxy how to be human. Dr. Cole Morrison raised an eyebrow. That's a dangerous request, Your Highness. Learning to think like a human might change your people in ways you can't predict. Princess Zalara thought of her perfect empire, with its 10,000 years of peace and its sophisticated civilization. Then she thought of the void devourers, ancient and hungry, moving through space toward everything she loved. Dr. Morrison, she said firmly, I'm beginning to think that change might be exactly what we need. Marcus smiled for the first time since she had known him. In that case, Your Highness, welcome to the human race. I hope you're ready for the ride. Princess Zalara looked at the massive display showing humanity's insane, impossible, brilliant preparations for Armageddon and realized that for the first time in her life, she actually felt optimistic about the future, even if that future involved learning to be primitive, violent, and just stupid enough to survive.